You're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. It's more fun to believe. Third year bonus. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. That's the program. What if that was just that fast? Welcome to the show. This is your buddy Ryan Singer. Thank you for listening to another episode of Me and Paranormal You. This has been anniversary week. So we've put out an episode every day this week. Are you sick of my voice yet? I just did the math. 573 weeks of the program. At the conclusion of this week, 573 weeks. That is a week plus 11 years. Yowzas, right? What a fun ride. What a strange trip it's been. I can't believe where it's taken me, and who knows where it will lead in the future. I've got some exciting things, in the can. In the development can, or in the development pipeline, I should say. Anyway, today we're going to talk about a little bit about episode 5 of the Dr. Stephen Greer podcast, which I referenced, I think, on Wednesday's 30-year bonus. And then, so we're going to get into a little bit of that. There was some interesting conversation. Like I said, Greer's trying to build out the disclosure mosaic, all the different pieces, because all of this stuff has been so compartmentalized within these contractors over the years. So every time a whistleblower comes forward, they have a tiny piece of the puzzle, which is, when I say tiny piece, I don't mean it's not an impactful piece. Every tiny piece is impactful when it comes to trying to understand the disclosure mosaic. It's a lot to try to wrap our brains around. I'm not going to lie to you. I've been doing my best so you don't have to, dig into all this stuff. That is hopefully I can get you a little further along the line in your understanding, potentially, if you got a busy life. Everybody does. As we try to figure out how we're going to withstand the rapid rise of fascism and et cetera in the United States, as we mourn the loss of what was once, a decent country, potentially for white people, is trying to become a great country for white people, which is a problem. It's funny to me because 2045 is by the time. That's the year when white people will be a minority in the United States. And it's like, can I just drink some NyQuil and wake up in 20 years when that's the case? White people are so scared. The white people who are in power are so scared that when they become the minority, that, all these other groups of people are going to behave in the way they have. That's what the fear is here. It's like, oh, we no longer are the majority here. Then, oh God, they're going to do to us what we've done to them. So I that's just so obvious to me that it's, it is frightening in some way. And this affects everything in life, including the disclosure movement and everything else about it. And Greer goes on, he doesn't go out of his way necessarily, but he does try to, clarify and make important the messaging that disclosure is a bipartisan effort. And it doesn't matter who's in office. They are moving disclosure forward the best they can with whoever has the power at the time, which is what you have to do. And in episode 5, he talks a little bit about all the ways that they keep things secret, how they have kept things secret. And it goes from the very beginning of the propaganda campaign, trying to make anyone who talked about UFOs or these kinds of things be a kook. They very deliberately did that. And they made an effort to bring in qualified, respected academics and scientists and they'd paid them off to make very clear statements that all this stuff was woo-woo, crazy stuff. And it's worked. There's people very close to me who they don't even want to have this conversation because it is challenging to, the propaganda that has, the propaganda, reality that has been built is such that it makes people uncomfortable to have to reconsider their whole entire worldview. And, I get that. But what we're here to do is try to chip away that a little bit. And, and if we can use comedy to do that sometimes, that's what my stand-up, not every joke I have is about any of this stuff. So sometimes it's about the foibles of my life, right? But we can also use that in, something like a podcast, and, maybe Todd will show up, or, maybe Disclosure Cowboy will show up. Disclosure Cowboy he's hard to keep in the stall right now, so to speak, because of everything that's with the disclosure, all the disclosure stuff happening. But, the tactics that are or have been and currently still used to try to keep whistleblowers and people who have this information quiet, go from the seemingly benign to the incredibly intense, like, horrible stuff. And you could only imagine, and I could yell from a mountaintop over here, you've got a piece of paper that you've got the document from 1985 that is a groundbreaking document that everyone needs to see, Jacques Vallée, and you're not making it public. You're part of the whatever. It's like you have no idea what may or may not have been said to him about the repercussions if he did so, all the way from trying to ruin someone's reputation to actually killing them. And I've been going down a Amy Eskridge rabbit hole, probably a little late to that. My friend turned me on to this story, sent me a couple links, and then boom, next thing you know, I'm watching a 3-hour video, and it is the disclosure of anti-gravity and some other things. It all ties in together with these contractors. And Huntsville, Alabama seems to be the hotbed of it. And, Rocket City, I love that whole area. You've heard me talk about Florence, Muscle Shoals area, which is about an hour and 15 minutes away by car. I love that area. And, Huntsville obviously is called Rocket City for a reason. That's where, there's 5,000 rocket scientists who live in that town. And I guess there was a show called Rocket City Rednecks. I never watched it. My buddy Gilbert Lowen has a really funny joke about it. And Travis Taylor was on that show, apparently. I didn't realize that, but he's the guy who's on Skinwalker Ranch. And Eskridge had some interesting opinions about him as well. That his job on Skinwalker Ranch is to play the audience and ask the questions that the audience was, and he knows it. And he's glad to have a paycheck to do it. But that he's a really smart guy, but he's playing a role on that show, which TV is TV. We know that. It's not a documentary. And even documentaries are somewhat skewed by the filmmakers. It's just, inherent. You just can't stop it from happening unless you're watching like a Big Brother, just cameras are set up and people don't know it and they're just being themselves, whatever, that's how creepy to me anyway. But yeah, I've never enjoyed those kind of shows. Those have always, like the Big Brother shows, the people where everybody goes into a house together, that just creeps me out. The whole idea of that kind of programming. And Bregman actually talks about that in Humankind, the book. It's adjacent to that, about, TV shows over the years doing, experiments or studies, sociological studies, and how there wasn't enough drama. So, and people weren't behaving how everyone thought they would. So there wasn't enough drama, so they wouldn't air the show, or they would go out of their way to manufacture drama constantly, which is what Zimbardo did. And it's what the Broken Windows guys did. It's just Stanley Milgram with the buzzer test. It's what they did, because they wanted attention. They wanted noise around what they did. They wanted to make a name for themselves more so than they wanted to actually truly understand human nature, which we all have delicious, decent pudding inside of us. We've discussed that ad nauseum probably for some of you, as I took my time reading that book, so it could really soak into my pudding, in my brain. Anyway, Greer goes on to talk about the different ways. I'm not going to get into the details of that. Some of it's gory and horrific, and I recommend watching episode 5 if you want to know more of the details. But there are, it's interesting because it all seems to be, here's the thing. It seems like names are getting named now. And I mean, whether it's Raytheon, Lockheed Skunk Works, Boeing, the people that are in the know, they know, it's these guys. It's these people. And there's a transnational organization that has been doing all this. It's not just the United States, apparently, according to Greer and the Disclosure Project. You can go to dpiarchive.com. You can see all kinds of documents and things like that they have in their archive, and it's bonkers. I mean, you can go see all of the secret facilities where they are on the map that are some of them probably in operation today, although they probably moved some of them, obviously, and found new places. But nonetheless, it's pretty fascinating. Greer reiterates that it is important work to get this disclosed, and I think we all know that, right? That all seems like common sense, and especially the anti-gravity, the free energy technology, which has been suppressed, which ties into the Amy Eskridge death, which was called a suicide, but everyone around her, except for the coroner and the police who showed up and investigated, think it's a murder. So what does that tell you? And she was supposed to be the one that disclosed anti-gravity. She also talked about those 8 forces of nature, which was the 6th force was the Higgs force, and the 7th force, energy into matter, or matter into energy into matter. And then she goes, the portals. We have a scientific basis of portals as being one of the fundamental forces of nature. Isn't that just interesting? Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. Patreon.com/Ryan Singer. Even the free patrons get all the episodes this week ad-free. $3 a month gets you every episode ad-free that ever comes out. We'll be right back. And I'm back. I hope you are too. Welcome to the show. We're celebrating. This is the, what is this? 802nd episode, 802. We're now into the 800s. We're barreling towards 1,000. I can't wait till we get to 1,111 episodes. I mean, what about 999? What about 888? Let's not pick favorites when it comes to really cool numbers. We're talking about Dr. Stephen Greer's latest episode of his podcast, the Dr. Stephen Greer podcast. We're talking, the subject of that one was how the, whatever you want to call it, the SSP, the secret space program people, the shadow government, the transnational shadow government, international, transnational, whatever, has kept secrets for so long, because people often argue, well, you can't keep a secret this big. It's impossible to keep a secret this big. And he talks about, at one point he said there have been 10,000 people who have been paid $10 million to keep their mouth shut over the years. And that there's trillions and trillions. These people have trillions and hundreds of trillions of dollars. He even references that someone like Elon Musk, who has a couple $100 billion, is not a player in this game. That he doesn't have the money to play that game. He's not at that level, which, I don't know, is pretty interesting. And then you look at everything that's going on as like, is he trying to get that money? Not to mention, it is interesting that USAID has connections to bringing down the apartheid in South Africa, and now he's dismantling it. I guess that wasn't a Nazi salute. Whatever. We all know it was a Nazi salute. There's not a debate. We won't even have that conversation on this program. He's a full-on Nazi. I don't know who's the person that's who would be romantically involved with such a person. Anyway, so we're talking about, episode 5 and, all the revelations that are coming out in that. And Greer seems to be really dropping some information now. And I don't know what is going on, but there was an announcement on his Discord a couple weeks ago that there was going to be a character attack, an assassination on his character attempt. That never came out. because they said it was going to come out within like a day or two, and that never happened. But that's one of the things, that's one of the tactics they use to try to intimidate whistleblowers and people from talking. Because like I said, they have, trillions of dollars. They have a worldwide plan to kind of, take over a totalitarian government over the world by making aliens seem like the bad guys. Something interesting as well, there's a couple things I want to do here. It's interesting because I have personal involvement in a project that would speak directly to this. That any abduction, because he says that people call him an abduction denier, because he's on record over and over saying that aliens do not abduct human beings and perform, horrible, horrible things on them as experiments. And aliens do not abduct cattle or animals and do mutilations. Those are humans, reverse engineered technology, and these like hybrid mechanical, fleshy, humanoid type, basically robots that we've created, that they've created, that pose, or people, or humans, who made to look like, aliens, do these in a long plan to incite panic and fear, so they can stage the fake alien invasion, which von Braun talked about on his deathbed, was the big plan. Amy Eskridge, in a 3-hour, not intended to be an interview or something that was ever posted on the internet, but since her death, it has been posted, a sprawling conversation where it's a little frustrating to listen to it because one of the microphones of the guys, this Jeremy Reese guy, doesn't work, so you can't hear what's going on, but he posted it on his YouTube. Anyway, she talks about how, in the industry, the propulsion industry and the science industry, when it comes to this advanced technology stuff, that they psychologically abuse the scientists. They torture them essentially by never letting them have the feeling of accomplishment and success, regardless of what they design that becomes, that's workable. They create something that's workable. They, as she says, you turn it on for the first time and it works, this prototype, and it works, and then they cancel it. And then they take that technology and those blueprints and they take it down below the public level into a secret level. Now it goes down, and it keeps these scientists hungry and thirsty for the validation of having success and recognition, etc. Because she said that there's this phenomena where if a scientist makes a big breakthrough, wins the Nobel Peace Prize or Nobel Prize on it or whatever, and then they kind of rest on their laurels, like, aren't I so smart? Aren't I so smart? I did this. And so they don't want scientists doing that. So they never let them have that moment, because then they're hungrier for it and they just keep doing it. And it's like, anyway, that ties in. Also, there's this, Greer said something that I had never heard before, and it was a little shocking. He said that they got to Carl Sagan as well. And apparently they had something, and this is what Greer says, that, Sagan obviously was very interested in, space exploration, ET contact, etc. And before I get to the Carl Sagan thing, just to finish that thought on the abduction denying claims of Greer, he says that, there has to be a distinction between like alien contact and alien abduction. And in fact, that aliens don't abduct us. It's these human, pretending to be, and, you pretty much couldn't tell the difference if you didn't really know. And when that's what this whole documentary about Fitz is. It's about cattle mutilations, and it goes into a bunch of other stuff. So, where does the truth lie? I don't know. Greer has spent 35 years of his life gathering whistleblowers and has all this information. So, it's hard to. I'm not going to pick a side on that, or I'm just not going to. So anyway, the Carl Sagan thing, that apparently there was some kind of impropriety in his PhD studies or something. Who knows what he did? Maybe he fudged some numbers or stole something, or maybe there was a little, he lifted somebody else's idea. I don't know exactly what it was, but apparently Carl Sagan had something in his past during his PhD studies, his program, that they knew about, and they said we can either ruin your career, because apparently he had some information or had been discovering something. And they said, we can either ruin your career and you'll be done, or we can make you rich and famous. And I think we all know, under at least the way the story is being told, we all know which one he chose. He chose to be rich and famous. And according to to the people close to him, one of his best friends, they say he aged 30 years overnight after he was forced to make a decision in this matter. That he aged 30 years overnight, and that it destroyed him. I guess we live with the decisions we make. All this to say, it's easy to sit outside of everything and judge and be like, how could you do that? Isn't this truth more important than your professional reputation? Yeah, but let's say you disclose some big piece of information that you want everyone to believe, and then immediately upon doing so, your reputation is ruined as being a fraud or a cheat or whatever. Who's going to believe that information that you presented? It's a real between the devil and the deep blue sea. Maybe it's time to grow some gills, everybody. I don't know. Wow. I mean, it's murky stuff. And I promise this whole episode is not going to be all about the murk. We're going to be right back after another quick break. Thanks for being here. 802. Ooh. And I'm back. I hope you're back again. Disclosure Cowboy, it's not time. Okay. You tried to saddle up and ride on in. It's just not, I mean, I get it. We're talking about the thing that you love the most. I don't even remember what he says, actually, by the way. Don't tell me, Disclosure Cowboy. DC over here trying to get up in the mix. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, I heard that about Carl Sagan, and I was just like, it kind of broke my heart a little bit. And, it doesn't mean that he still didn't inspire, generations of people to love space and be curious about the exploration of such thing and the possibility of ET contact. And because he did, most assuredly, he did do that, even if there was a very, very high personal cost for him, it turns out, even though he got paid handsomely, apparently. So that, so all these people, 10,000 people have been paid at least $10 million over the years. Some more, some less. There are certain names that he doesn't name that, you wish he did, because it's like, oh, I want to know who that is, right? But something interesting, though, is, and being from Dayton, being born and raised in the Dayton, Ohio area, this is good news. Mike Turner was removed from being the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. He is the representative that has Dayton, Ohio, and Wright Pat Air Force Base. And he is mentioned in the foreword of this, in the introduction or whatever, of the second book by Lukatsky, Colm Kelleher, and George Knapp, who, by the way, they're all part of the team, right? I mean, they're about disclosure, yeah, but I mean, what information can you trust? I mean, Greer's pretty much on the firmly clear about Lou Elizondo just kind of being a guy who's trying to stir up some national security narratives. That it's imperative that for national security we know all this. And Elizondo has apparently called Greer a terrorist and things like that, which is insane. We're not on Team Elizondo over here, and I guess if you go back and listen, I never really have been. I've always been a little suspicious of the guy. I don't think I'm going to read his book. Maybe I should, but as you know, if you listen to the episode on Wednesday, I'm moving into the trilogy by Robert Monroe. We started reading that book together. That could be an interesting thing. Maybe I'll do on Patreon. It'll be, I guess, kind of an audio book for people. Maybe I'll pick a book that I've never read, and I'll just read a chapter, and do that. I don't know. That seems, I don't know who wants to read a chapter at a time, like week by week, one chapter a week. That seems like, it could take a long time. It could take more than half a year, depending if there's how many chapters are. Anyway, I want to talk about, just wrap this up on the Greer thing, the episode 5 part of his podcast. And it's interesting, the more and more we see the disclosure mosaic come together that he's putting out there. And like I said, for some reason, he seems to be saying names and things more right now. And I think that is indicative of the escalation of a thing and of disclosure. And he said it's all this information is coming out this year, next year at the latest. Now, there's one piece of this podcast that I think is truly, truly fascinating. He talks about there are scientists who he didn't name, who created some kind of tubular, vibration noise device. I forget what he called it. And if they reach a certain frequency, it brings into 3D reality a creature in the lab. It that looked like it was from the ninth ring of hell is what he said they said. So there are certain vibrations and frequencies that we can create that will manifest these interdimensional creatures, whatever they are. And this is not, to be clear, this is different than ETs. This is not the things that are, sending UFOs and things like that here. This is different. And I thought that was, that blew my mind, right? And it makes you wonder about the Hadron Collider, and things like that. It's like, okay, so, we maybe we do know, and maybe we don't know exactly what we're doing, and that there is, here's what he said the categories kind of really are for people who have experiences of strange stuff. He said that for decades, they have been able to bring these creatures in to create terrifying experiences for people or other things like that, right? So, which is crazy to me. Now if Amy Eskridge is correct, which I tend to believe she probably is. I mean, she was a genius by all accounts. The daughter of 2 rocket scientists, essentially. Famous father, used to run the propulsion at JPL. Anyway. So I tend to, okay, yeah, that's, accurate. I mean, because she also talks about, this is interesting. She also talks about, Project Paperclip, which von Braun was in charge of. She calls it Paperclip 1.0. And the people that trained under that team were, she calls Paperclip 2.0. And the people that were trained by those people are Paperclip 3.0, which is kind of where we are right now. There's 3.0s, Paperclip 3.0 people, right? So anyway, so Greer is talking about how there are real ETs. There are man-made ETs that, we have built from reverse engineering their technology for over 60 years, 70, 80 years. And there are other things, whether he says, higher frequencies, whether you want to call them angels, there's lower frequencies, whether you want to call them demons, there's creatures, other things, whether they're interdimensional, I don't know, right? So that's a whole nother subset of things that exist that they know about, which we know they know about, and we've talked about on here a little bit. And that's what this is one of the things that we go trying to discover and look for when we're, making our expeditions and our trips. Now, the idea that Eskridge talks about the 8 forces of, nature, and just as a quick refresher, we can talk about what, the first 4 are, which but might need a refresher on. We got the music coming in. When we come back, we're going to talk about the 8 forces of nature, and not to mention some other interesting just mind bombs dropped by Eskridge and Greer. And we're going to talk about the implications of what it means for reality and all this kind of stuff. And everything in the paranormal is real. Just as we suspected, my friends. Just as we've not even suspected, just as we've already known. We're going to be right back after this short break. And we're back. And listen, I'm not going to be the guy out there running around town saying, I told you so. That's not what I'm going to be doing when all this stuff comes out, right? And 10 years from now, I could look back on all this and be like, oh man, I was really sucked into this whole thing and didn't realize what a fool I was, right? If Greer ends up being like the biggest charlatan of all, which, talk about a long con. I would be shocked if that were the case, right? So, and, you have to be careful not to get into like Greer's not the guy who's going to save us. This isn't a savior situation or, all the MAGA heads love Trump and, the Muskrats love Elon or whatever. Oh, the fascist racists. But this isn't, I'm not like a Greer head over here, but I am totally on side Greer. I'm on team Greer for sure. Cause I'm on team disclosure, and that's what Greer is all about. This is about an ideal. It's not about a person. It's about a way of life that should be. And Greer talks about how, the technology who is it? I think it's Mike, Amy Eskridge's former business partner before she died, talks about how we're the only planet in the universe using GPS with combustible engines. And when he says a sentence like that, it makes you understand, like, oh, okay. Yeah, that our technology has stalled for 100 years. Greer also talks about that. I think there is some speculation that when David Grush is talking about people who have been killed, whistleblowers or people who are going to be whistleblowers or disclosing information have been killed, there's speculation that directly referencing Amy Eskridge, who was, I think, 34, 35 at the time of her death. Just a brilliant young genius. Grew up her whole life in Huntsville being surrounded by and then she talks about how she was homeschooled at one point and all the other people who were homeschooled. And it's just like, oh my God, this is like such a small group of people. You know what I mean? And then also something that we talked about on this, I don't know, I said it, I don't know, it was a few weeks ago. I had some kind of something I wish I could remember, but Hal Puthoff came up and it really rubbed me the wrong way. And I was like, fuck Hal Puthoff, right? And then I was like, you can't say that, no need to go that far. But Amy Eskridge I have a direct quote from her during this talk. Maybe I'll link the video. It's 3 hours. It's not easy to sit through the whole thing, at least in one sitting. Quote, Hal Puthoff is extremely evil. End quote. Multiple times she says that. Puthoff is also one of these guys who's always on the documentary being like, oh, I couldn't say something because I've signed NDAs. I could be killed. Or not I could be killed, but, I can't talk about that. And then just won't give an answer. She described him, kind of paraphrasing, as kind of like, quiet little grandpa who's just kind of real nice, kind and nice, but just actually pretty evil, like the scientist in Stranger Things. So, not the Paul Reiser character. So, but the guy actually experimenting on children. I think is how Mark references how. So it's just like, yeah, he's just been in the game too long. He knows too much. He's part of the secrets. You know what I mean? He's part of the gatekeeping. Who knows? Maybe he'll redeem himself and tell a bunch of truths. Who knows how rich he's become, or who knows why he does what he does? I don't know. According to Eskridge, he's pure evil, or what was it? He's what was it? Yeah, he's extreme. Hal Puthoff is extremely evil. Apparently, he'd been over at her house 3 different times because, visiting her dad. And one of the times she was there. Anyway, it's just like, all these people. It's like this little... And she was always warned to not work with Bigelow because it wasn't... It wasn't because he's evil as much as he'll nickel and dime you and then take control and take over your project, which... From my personal experience of talking to someone who's kind of been loosely on a project, who knows? I mean, it sounds like that probably tracks. But who knows? I mean, I don't know. These billionaires, who have their own space programs. I mean, who's to say? Who's to know any of this stuff? But let's get back to the... I guess just to finish this train of thought, you're playing for keeps over here in this world, right? So if you have secrets, and Greer mentions it, that some of the special forces guys have not told him certain things, so they're like, we don't want you to have this information because you would be killed if you had it. It's a real playing for keeps kind of game, apparently, which, is pretty dramatic, right? But who knows? It's seems true. So, but Greer, just to piggyback on the thing I mentioned earlier, Greer also talked about how there's been a technology stall for 100 years, right? And I think that's what one of the latest films is about. I got to watch that later today. But the Lost Century, I think is what it's called. And Eskridge references that, how, and her business partner, Mark, references that. It's stalled out, and there's no real explanation why. And we've talked about that a while ago, I think, when we talk about the technology that we had to get to the moon the first time is what we're still using. It doesn't seem plausible. Let's talk about the 8 forces of nature, which she just randomly started dropping during this interview. The first 4, or you knew them and just haven't thought about them in a while. Gravity is the first one. The second one is the weak force. Third one is electromagnetic force. The fourth one is the strong nuclear force. And then she gets into the next 4, which you never hear about. Higgs force was number 5. I don't know what that is. Number 6, anti-gravity, which she was going to disclose in her dad's work because her dad cracked the code, right? And so she was going to disclose it. Number 7, energy into matter into energy, which... is described as, imagine being able to take, just a portal, essentially. Just boom. That's what a portal essentially is scientifically. I'm paraphrasing her words here. And then the 8th force of nature never gets mentioned because she gets cut off while she's talking. And they never circle back and mention what the 8th is. And it's beyond aggravating. That did not get mentioned. And it's like, what is the 8th force of nature? I mean, it's some kind of, it's tied into consciousness or something, or the power of thought, or, some kind of psychokinetic thing, or who knows what. I have no idea what it could be, right? So, but yeah, so, maybe we're on a quest to try to find out what the 8th would have been. I got to reach out to her former business partner and see if he knows. Maybe I can get him to jump on the podcast. Who knows? It seems like, considering everything that's happened, it's, her suicide actually being a murder, that really raises the stakes as they, I guess it's called wet work, referencing the blood So I guess that's, the ultimate intimidation factor, to get wet worked. When they say I need a wet team over here or something, you see that in movies and TV shows always. There's been so many special ops TV shows and movies. It just seems like we've been inundated with the violence of it all over the last 20 years. Meanwhile, we still can't see a nipple, God forbid, or a ball sack. Jesus would be so ashamed if we saw a woman's nipple or a man's peen on the TV screen. But hey, John Wick, go shoot people in the head 300 times in a 2-hour movie. Jesus loves that shit. Now, to be fair, probably Christians aren't like out there being like, everyone should watch John Wick. Who cares? I'm so sick and tired of the whole Christian thing in general. But it says probably more about me than anything else, like we mentioned the other day. So, I mean, it is interesting. I keep saying interesting when probably the word could be, I don't know, scary, exciting, thrilling, long overdue, needed, when it comes to disclosure and the ending. And Greer calls for, hey, where has law enforcement been during all this? We have kidnapping, we have abductions, we have murder, we have intimidation, we have extortion, we have the misappropriation of funds, we have theft of taxpayer money, we have secrets, we have treason, we have everything happening. So where is law enforcement? Why are they not doing a damn thing about any of this? And most of it probably has to do with because it's all been considered woo-woo, just garbage for years. And he says there actually is some movement on that. So we'll see. I don't know what any of it means. I'd like to think that I've become smart enough over the years to understand that I could be revealed as extremely dumb at any moment. Meaning, I look around right now about what's happening, and I'm just like, what the fuck is it? This is dismantling. I mean, this is crazy. Not trying to get caught up in the hoopla of it all, et cetera, et cetera. Then if like 3 weeks from now, it's all revealed that this was to root out, which is not going to happen. That's some real QAnon bullshit. But, I would eat my words if so. But, let's just say I'm not skipping any meals in the meantime. I'll tell you that because, the QAnon stuff is all bullshit. But talk about the appropriation of every conspiracy theory ever made into a singular cause. I mean, whoever decided to do it is a real fucking psycho. Some real sickos out there. But any hoodles. Yeah, disclosure seems to be happening. And it seems to be happening because it is. And there are people who have been killed for it, apparently. But there's people out there still, fighting the good fight. And the ETs obviously aren't on the side of the darkness. So don't get convinced that they are. So this is where, I have a conflict of interest. Greer talks about how all the mutilations, all the abductions and things like that are man-made. They're not ETs doing that. The Colorado Mutilation Ranch, according to Greg and Mama Sue and, the work being done out there in contact with Fitz, friends in the sky, the aliens, there seems to be a reason that those are being done that is actually not nefarious. You'll have to watch the documentary as soon as we get the music done, but so it's I'm kind of torn between both sides here, and then I can't help but think about my the soul contract that Sarah Goff told me about, like don't pick a side, and I have to okay, well, so I'm not going to pick a side on that. I'm not trying to be wishy-washy or flip-floppy. I'm just not picking a side on all that because I don't have firsthand knowledge of it. I can't tell you. You know what I mean? I'm a stand-up comedian who loves the paranormal. I've had experiences. I'm not a government insider. I don't have a deep throat source. You know what I mean? Good for the people who do, right? That's not the life I'm living over here. The FBI or whoever isn't going to raid my house. I'm not sitting on some secret piece of evidence or document, No one's handed me a manila envelope on a park bench somewhere in the middle of nowhere being like, I'll tell you the date to release these. None of that's happening over here. I'm trying to write jokes about, Bigfoot, ghosts, crystals, and the foibles of my life. The foibles of my life. The foibles of my life is so foible-filled. I'm not escorting. I'm not sitting on some, smoking gun. That doesn't mean that I'm not interested in trying to help raise awareness about things, because 100%, that's what this whole thing is about. And Charles Tart, who wrote the introduction to the first Robert Monroe book, talks about, we talked about that the other day, and he even wrote it about, how people, when they have these experiences, they don't want to share them because people think they're crazy. And then, what happens when it turns out they're not? And we know what happens when it turns out they're not, because we know. We don't believe that these things are real. We know that they are real, and there's a big difference. And it goes back to the paranormal being deeply personal and intimate, and it becomes a fabric of who you are moving forward. Your paradigm, your worldview, everything shifts and changes. And now you're operating in a world that's different than what most people want to accept. And you are made to feel crazy when, in fact, you're not the crazy one. And it's not that they're crazy. They're just in denial or too lazy to look into it because they've got... And too lazy is too harsh of a statement, probably. They haven't had the time, the interest, or whatever because of 100+ years of the brainwashing, of the propaganda, that this is what the world actually is. And I can't blame people for that. It's not like they're actively being that way. It's a passive thing that occurs. Now, there are people who actively partake in it. I don't know, like someone like Neil deGrasse Tyson. I'd say he's an active asshole when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I don't know. The guy's just too smug for me. He's too much of a know-it-all for me. And he's actually, his backstory actually has some holes in it. Anyway, so... he's the kind of guy who's like, oh, if someone's pretty stupid if, I'm paraphrasing, someone's stupid if they believe in ghosts. It's just like, I would not be surprised at all if he's a company man, right? If he's one of these bought and sold kind of guys out there. Make no mistake that he's like the pop culture voice of the cutting edge of science, but he's the most square, backwards asshole out there. Right. But he's on your favorite podcasts. He's on your favorite comedy podcast. So he must be pretty cool, right? No, he's an asshole. We can make some definitive statements on this program. But yeah, so there's people like that, obviously, who are actively being assholes about it. But most people are... The vast majority of people, it's a passive thing. And it's just, it's the world that we've been taught is real. So, we can't spend every day of our life like questioning the reality of our existence. I mean, some of us do, but a lot of us have other things going on and we just can't live that life. Hey, listen, I want to have a fantasy baseball draft every once in a while, right? I just want to like watch a baseball game or, watch a movie. Or, get sucked into the Despicable Me franchise. Or, count the minutes until the Mandalorian movie comes out. Or the Andor comes back on. Or, get on eBay and look at baseball cards. Or walk into a baseball card shop. Or go into a metaphysical shop and look at all the tarot decks and the crystals and things like that. I'm not spending every moment of my life being like, what is real? What is real? Who's keeping the secrets? Like that's, I don't get into the paranoia of the conspiracy. That's just not how I want to live my life. But there is, disclosure is unfolding, and there are people who have paid the price for trying to move it forward, to try to get the truth out, because there's bad people. There's people doing very bad things at the very least. And Greer says 12% of people are sociopaths, and a small percentage of those are psychopaths. If those numbers are accurate, and he says, most of those people become, leaders or CEOs of companies. And if that number is true, it makes sense, because in a world of community, which human beings are, because we all have decent, delicious pudding inside of ourselves, why are there some people who rise to the top for whatever reason? And we call it ambition, and we applaud it, and we reward them with praise and the label of genius oftentimes, when it is pure just drive to do whatever it takes to get so much more than one could ever need. Why are we applauding that? Why is that a thing that is revered in our society? You might have to ask yourself, I'm sure you've already asked yourself these questions, and you start to understand the inherent flaw in it all. And you understand, why I could give two shits about ever being famous. When I was younger, sure, yeah, that was a drive of mine. And then I started thinking for myself, and, understanding some truths because of experiences I had and people I met. And then, deciding that a large part of it is you get to, when you start to understand that reality isn't all you've been told through a paranormal experience, that bleeds into everything else. And that bled into everything else for me. The way why am I letting other people define my world, right? About what is real and what is not real? Because I've witnessed I've been told to my face is not real, but I've seen it. Why am I letting other people define what my success is? When, if I'm not going to let people define my world and what's real and what's not real, why would I let them define everything else? Why would I let the outside define all of these things for me? And so then you take control, you empower yourself when it comes to, okay, I get to decide what makes me successful, what makes me happy. And I get to know these things instead of just believe that they will pay off. And that's why there's so many angry people who are old and rich, because they're at the end of their life. They sacrificed everything for this dream that they were sold, that's supposed to fulfill them and make them happy. And they're pissed off because it didn't do that. Why are there so many old rich people who are angry and cranky? Why? It's because they know they got fooled, right? They didn't get the gold at the end of the rainbow that they were promised. And now they're pissed off about it, and they don't know how to channel that. They don't know where to put that anger. So they put it on immigrants. They put it on trans kids. They put it on, gay marriage. They put it on, they strip away women's rights to their own body. They funnel that anger into a religious paradigm, which makes everyone else the enemy, because God damn it, there has to be a reason why I'm pissed off. And it's not because I played the game the way I was supposed to play the game, even though I had an inherent advantage because I was born white in America. It's because somebody else has affected my happiness in a negative way, and they should be stopped. It's like, hey man, you won the game, dude. The game was set up for you to win. You won it, and you're still angry and pissed off. There's a difference between hatred and righteous anger. You can see that play out right now in the United States in a very stark way. Anger stems from, righteous anger stems from inequality, unjustifiable actions being done to people who don't deserve them, exclusion. Hatred stems from lies, from racism, from misogyny, from sexism, from homophobia, from transphobia. That's where hatred comes from. And it's all about that person. It's all about them. And it always will be. Because They played the game the way they thought it was supposed to be played because they believed the game maker. And it didn't make them happy when they won. So now what? Life has been wasted. It's never too late to change that frame of mind. Who knows if they will? Righteous anger is justified. Hatred is for the ignorant and the afraid. I mean, I think we know that. And so, and that applies across the whole entirety of the world of the paranormal as well. So why do people hate experience or sharing their stories so much? Don't threaten my comfort zone. I've bought in and I can't afford to cash my chips in now because it's too late. They think, and it's never too late. Never too late to get on the side of the lightness, the side of disclosure, the side of world peace, of inclusion, of boundaryless vulnerability. We don't need walls. We need welcoming committees. We don't need billionaires. We need food banks. This is just the way it is. And the psychopaths are running everything. But there's a lot more of us than there is of them. And that's where the hope lies. 573 weeks. Boy, oh boy. Looking forward to another 573. Thank you for listening. This has been anniversary week. Wow, we did. Part of me is like, maybe I should just do an episode every day for the rest. You just keep going that way. That's a lot of content, everybody. Anyway, I have enjoyed it immensely, and I hope you have too. I've got some special surprises coming next week as well. I can't wait to share all this stuff with you. I hope you found some information that was usable, enjoyable, entertaining to a certain degree as well. Disclosure Cowboy did not get a chance to pop in, but maybe next time. I love you. I hope you love yourself. You're the one who can guarantee to give it to you, so you might as well. Hope to see you on the road this summer when I'm doing shows, or this spring. RyanSingerComedy.com has tour dates. Patreon.com/Ryan Singer has all the Patreon stuff. $3 a month, no commercials ever. Anniversary week, one final reminder, all these episodes are ad-free over at the Patreon. Even if you're a free member, you have to be a free member. You have to sign up and join, and then no ads. Okay, I'll see you on the road somewhere. If not, I'll see you at the watering hole on the astral plane.